drill instructors slash drill sergeants of Reddit, what's the funniest thing you've seen a recruit do that you couldn't laugh at? Had one recruit paying attention to a bunch of geese rather than us. Made him get up and chase them all away. As they flew in the air, we made him follow them for several hundred feet to make sure they wouldn't come back. I was dying if laughter on the inside. Didn't know recruits were permitted to participate in joint training exercises with Canadian Special Forces. Was never a D, but I can pass along a classic boot camp story. I was in the Navy, and in the Navy, your final inspection as a division is before the division officer, which is usually some junior officer puke that got assigned that job, but we didn't know any better. Anyway, before the inspection, one of our RDCs, that's what we called the D in the nav, found a locker out of sorts and decided to beat us in our dress blues. That was not fun, let me tell you. Wool uniforms. If we lost our cover, we got beat more. It was bad. Anyway, the dude rolls in for inspection, walks up to the first dude in formation, and he pukes. However, this guy was a ducking genius. He puked down the t-shirt in his dress blues, saving the dude from getting puked on and us from getting beat even more. The division officer was so impressed at this dude's military bearing that he called the inspection right then and there. 5-0 sailors all around. We still got beat that night, but that guy was a hero. Standing in formation at Fort Knox about to head to the range and everyone needs their gloves. One private comes out without them, and the DS screams, "Private, where the duck are your gloves?" In this thick Tennessee accent he goes, "Well, damn drill sergeant, I must have done left them some beaches upstairs." The DS from New Jersey just dies laughing. I'm sorry, that accent, I can imagine it so well, just ducking does it. Yeah, it was pretty awesome, because the DS was knife handing him in the throat and staring into his soul trying to be scary, and then he just loses it, like cracking up, wheezing for air. At boot, it was taps out, and one of the RDCs show up and was doing a walkthrough. It was just before lights out. He was going through the head, and then a loud scream, "Oh my god, has jerking off, get your ducking deck out of your hand, and out of my sight. Why the duck is your deck staring at me, recruit?" Taps didn't happen as scheduled, and I still talk to this guy X years later. Also my bunkmate Mayo. I was going through Air Force basic training, and when on guard duty, if an unauthorized person wanted to be let into the bunks, you had to report it to your drill sergeant. Our sister flight's drill sergeant came up while I was on guard and requested entry, so I reported to my sergeant, and he had me ask the other a series of questions. This particular sergeant had a bushy mustache, so one question I had to ask was, in what year was Magnum Pie cancelled? He dropped out of view from the window laughing, came back up, and yelled it was never cancelled because I'm still here. It took everything I had not to crack up. So when you start basic, your body doesn't know how to handle no sugar, caffeine, rigorous exercise, and sleeping schedules, so it's in shock. With this shock, shitting becomes a problem for a few. Well, every day after the first week is required to ask around if everyone has taken a shit, and from there he assigns one recruit to track who has shit and who has not. I shit you not, pun intended. We had one guy who would stand in the barracks at the end of the night rolling off names of people who hadn't shit yet. Finally, we have one guy who is still on there after 2 weeks, and the D tells him to go to the doctor. The drive gives him an get out of jail free card, essentially saying that at any point he says the magical words "I gotta shit" and he can escape any situation. Well, recruit can't shit, we'll call him, gets the smart idea that he's going to play his new trump card as long as possible. Every time that we are getting grilled, "I gotta take a shit" comes ringing in from the back of the formation. This probably happened 6 times until RD caught on. Finally RD devises a plan that when recruit can't shit goes into the bathroom, he's going to have a couple of us hold onto his legs and slide him into the stall, or Exorcist style. The time comes, and recruit can't shit excuses himself. We all follow RD into the bathroom and slide him under there, like he's the spawn of Satan. This catches recruit can't shit by surprise. He doesn't know what the duck is going on, as that he is utterly berating him about lying and using this as an excuse to sit on the toilet. Then we hear a very audible "oh shit" from the stall. that he scared the recruit so much he actually took a shit right then and there. The D made every recruit look at it, and we played taps for it as we flushed it down the toilet. While in basic we had a female that loved to smile. She was just a happy person in general. Well, my T training instructor came in, and she caught the female trainee smiling. T didn't like smiling. She walked up to the female trainee and yelled, "Wipe that smile off your face." Female trainee stopped smiling. The T continued to yell, "No. Literally wipe the smile off your face with your hand." Trainee does so. "Now throw it on the ground." Trainee follows orders. "Now stomp on it and scream back quote die, smile die. As loud as you can." The female trainee stood there for a second before following through. Her tiny little voice cracks as she yelled die, smile die. And I will say it took everything I had not to bust out laughing. Had a guy in my Navy dividend. Not really a big deal smiler, just his facial physiognomy. He looked like he was grinning. About the second phase of training, he made an effort to frown to stop the attention. At some point, the RDC asked him what he was smiling about. He responded with something like "not smiling, petty officer. Just ugly, apostrophe." An RDC in another division asked a guy if he shaved that morning and the guy claimed he had. The RDC said, "Recruit, you are either a werewolf or you are lying. So which is it?" The guy responded, "I must be a werewolf, petty officer. Why is that man howling at the moon, petty officer? Lying, sir." Carry on. Not me, but I had a great team sergeant who had a floater wonky eye that he was blind in from an injury in Iraq. So one eye was dead on and worked fine, but he had this one Uncle Ruckus eye that just did its own thing. He was a very physically imposing man with that classic drill sergeant bass-filled voice, and his crazy eye just added to it, and he knew it. He told a story about his time as a drill sergeant when two privates had sat down on fire watch and were kinda just being real lackadaisical about their duties when he found them. So he starts just giving them the business classic Full Metal Jacket style. And finally he just ending his rant right before he's about to smoke them for who knows how long, when one of the offending privates just says, "Drill sergeant, are you yelling at us or the water fountain?" It stopped him dead in his rage and he just walked away mid-knife hand. Oh shit, it's probably too late for this, but I just thought of one. I was a super light sleeper during basic training. One night I woke up for no reason. The sleeping bay was dark except for the light by the desk where the two soldiers on fire guard were supposed to be awake and alert. Both of them were leaning back in their chairs dead asleep. I started to throw my covers off to go wake them up. If a drill sergeant came through and caught the fire guard sleeping, we'd all pay. But then I heard a slow scraping sound to my right, off in the darkness. I froze and heard it again, closer. A few heartbeats later I almost screamed out loud as I saw the sharp and tense face of our Samoan drill sergeant in the darkness. His face was covered in full camo. He was low crawling underneath the line of bunk beds towards the fire guard. He had a bayonet in between his teeth. We locked eyes, and he silently raised one finger to his mouth, signaling for silence. I nodded and sat back to watch the show as the drill sergeant resumed his low crawl under and passed my bunk in the direction of the sleeping guards. I have a bunch of stories of funny shit I did to correct soldiers when I later became an NCO, but that image, like something straight out of an 80s war movie, will always stick with me. In Navy boot camp they call forced PT beatings. Everyone knows what a beating is. Navy doesn't have drill instructors, they call them RDCs, recruit division commanders. One day standing in ranks, the RDC is going around asking random trivia questions about a test we had to take to make sure we had been studying. He gets to a guy who was eccentric, to say the least. This is about a month and a half into boot camp. RDC asks the question, guys gets it wrong, so RDC yells, "No wrong, beat yourself." Literally everyone knew this meant start doing push-ups, so the expectation is he will start doing push-ups as the RDC moves to the next guy to ask a question. I was standing across from the guy, and he had a confused look on his face. He looked at his own hand for 5 seconds, then hauled off and slapped himself in the face. It made a loud crack sound. He got himself good. I cracked and chuckled, trying to keep composure at attention. The RDC looked at me, then realized why I laughed had to do with the slapping sound. He turned back to self-slapping guy and asked him, If he slapped himself. Guy says you told me to beat myself. Cue the entire barracks cracking up. It was a single moment during boot camp where the curtain was raised, and a moment of unadulterated levity came over everyone. The RDC couldn't stop laughing, so the tough guy's whole persona melted away for a good 60 seconds, until he regained composure, and made us all do push-ups. The push-ups were an easy price to pay for that moment. We had two 5 feet 1 stocky blonde guys named Johnson in our company one cycle. Different platoons, no relation at all, but they looked really similar. One day during grass week a couple J-hats made them face each other and go back and forth screaming, "You're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." "No, FCKU, you're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." You have absolutely no clue how hard it was to not break into a million pieces after about 5 minutes of that. I'm Dirty Dan, Boot Camp Edition.